It being 6:02, I'll call the April 6th, yes, April 6th meeting of the Finance Committee to order. First order of business is approval of minutes from March 11th.
Recording in progress.
Has everybody had a chance to at least look at them? And take a motion from someone?
Motion to approve?
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes as written. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I had no vote.
No, actually you do, believe it or not.
I wasn't present for it. So.
Yeah, but I believe, right, he can still vote. Tom?
Can, but if he wants to abstain, that's fine.
Yeah, abstain.
Okay. So we have a 7-1, 0-1 vote. Item 3, Town Administrator's Operating Budget Message. Would you like to
Sure.
enlighten us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee. Just want to thank all the staff for coming out tonight. Thank the Finance Committee for holding these hearings this week. Just going to do really a quick walkthrough. There's no elaborate presentation or anything. But just for the folks that may be watching this tomorrow on YouTube or in the couple weeks ahead, if you go to the franklinma.gov website, and then right in the middle of it, after the beautiful pictures of Smith Farm, you can get to the town budget page. And if you click on that, as showing on your screen, thanks Chris, you will get a one-stop shop of all of the town budget archive stuff. So if you look down on this, you can get a budget process link, you can get our flow chart, you can hear on the current climate, you can go through the budget archives with operating budgets, capital budgets, budget narratives. It has all of our bond ratings, all of our audits, financial audits, and a bunch of other resources at the bottom, helpful links like the Prop 2.5 primer, Division of Local Services for the state, and a bunch of other links that may be helpful. There's actually also a glossary in here, so if you don't understand the foreign language that we speak in sometimes, and some of the acronyms, you can go look in the glossary. The state's come up with a great glossary for all the verbiage that we use. But for this year, if folks go to the fiscal year 2027 budget, I know we're in calendar year 2026, but we'll actually be talking about the FY27 budget. You actually go to our one-stop shop portal. And if, like we've been doing for the last several years, I know this is information overload for a lot of people, but we always think it's really important to show a chronological history of all of the meetings, of all of the information, all the memos, all the data sets. And we started it all the way back at the bottom of the page last August, which was really the start of the budget season, was really at the end of last summer. And then I've got some meetings in here from December, January, February. We've got all of the minutes, we've got all the agendas, we've got the YouTube recordings, so that residents, as we ramp up for budget season, can go back and look at the history of the amount of meetings that and information that's been out there. At the top of the page, we're going to also go through this at the joint budget meeting on August 16th, but very quickly. You'll see on there FY27 Town Administrator Budget Message. I know the words budget message seem weird, but that's actually the verbiage that's in the town charter, so to mirror that. And then we've got all these appendices. Appendix A and B are probably the ones that most folks are interested in. Appendix A is the voting document and the budget book, which we'll go through tonight. And then we put in Appendix B, the Franklin Public School District budget book. Appendix C, 1 through 9, is a bunch of historical data sets. If you went back 10 years, none of this information was available for anybody. So we feel very proud and very transparent and very thorough with the amount of information that the budget staff and the school and town finance staffs and HR staffs have been able to put up, and hopefully giving residents the information that they need. We always know that people want to recharacterize things and move things around and think of data a little bit differently, but at least it gives you operating budget revenue, fixed costs, local aid histories, local receipts, new growth, free cash balances, and a variety of other information. The budget message book with this beautiful photo outside of the library, which is our cover for this year. is a whopping 225 pages. I know it's long, people don't want to read it all. Hopefully the Finance Committee's taken a look through, and other residents have. But again, if you went back 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 years ago, nothing like this was there. We have all sorts of data sets, charts, and this is what our department heads and our staff essentially populate into the book with the story that they want to tell. So there's trends in here, strategic initiatives. For anybody at home, they can keyword search it, and they can go through the whole book and read some of the stories and strategic initiatives of the departments and the staff that are sitting behind me tonight. The part we're going to focus on tonight is obviously by town charter, the Finance Committee reviews all the financial documents put out in the budget, and you make a recommendation to the town council. I'll save for later on, but my guess is if members of the committee want to make any proposed changes, my recommendation is that the committee would have to vote in favor of recommending something. Like, for example, maybe the committee decides we don't recommend $20,000 in this particular line item. Well, we would ask for a full vote of the committee, and then what we will do is either at the end of this week, or if the committee wants to wait until May, until healthcare numbers are in, we can send a letter to the council saying the Finance Committee has voted in the affirmative on all of this, except we make recommendations on A through whatever, to say we think you should move money here, take it away from here, add money to here, whatever your recommendations are, or revise this assumption here. But obviously we need the Finance Committee to vote in favor of one of those changes to put into a document to recommend to the town council. So with that, I'm going to dive into the revenue because it just takes a few minutes, and then I'll stop just to ask and make sure everybody has any questions. If folks look up at the screen, this is the exact same data that was put out in February, but our revenue sources in a municipal budget are not that many different buckets. If folks look up at, this is now, the Appendix A, I should cite. This is Appendix A off of the budget site. This is the budget book and the voting document. And this first page is the revenue and control sheet for the town. So this is exactly where our sources of revenue are. And these are what our assumptions are going into the fiscal year starting on July 1st. Up at the top, you have your tax levy, and what we do is we take previous year's tax levy, which is $96.3 million. We take the amount of new growth that was certified by the state, which is 862,000. We add those together, and then times it by 2.5, and you end up getting the 90, just a hair under 100 million for the tax levy for next year. When you add in our assumption for new growth, that brings the tax levy to 1,453,488. So that's really your 2/3 of your entire revenue source is through property taxes, through the tax levy. We separate out debt exclusions, which is also by law part of your tax levy. We separate all the debt exclusions out into one chunk. Why? Because the voters of the town have voted to increase their taxes for these projects. When these projects fall off the schedule and they're paid off, that tax in your property tax rate then sunsets. So some people may see some blanks up here, and you will notice that the Keller Sullivan School was paid off in FY25. Therefore, in FY26 and 27, there are no debt payments, and so that tax is now sunset. You'll see the Horace Mann issue number 2 debt exclusion on there. That is actually coming off this year. So if you look at the column all the way to the right on FY27, you'll notice the previous year and this current year there's 260,000. This year there's nothing because that entire project has fallen off. So if you look over the last 2 fiscal years, Keller Sullivan and Horace Mann have both come off the debt exclusion schedules. I know that people don't feel like their taxes went down because of that, but the assessors bake that into their overall formula, and now that those debt payments are gone, about, what is it, 520,000 worth of debt exclusion tax is now sunset off the tax rate. And so that's a good thing for those that are interested in those things. So the only projects left are your high school, which you'll be paying for, what, 25, 30 more years or something? It was a 40-year note. And then also the Tri-County School has just come on, and that school anticipates to open next year. The debt exclusions are separate in the section, but they still are baked into your full tax levy. So your tax levy after all this is officially 105 million and change, and that represents, again, about 2/3 of your overall budget. The second chunk of money that makes up the budget is the state revenue. So you look up here, these are the exact numbers and figures that were given out in Governor Healy's budget. So state revenue, we have Chapter 70, we've got charter school reimbursements, unrestricted general government aid, and then other net offsets, which is just a summary of a bunch of other smaller pieces, like mosquito control and a variety of other things that are in state cherry sheets. What Evan does, our budget directors, we just plug the number right in. And so you can see here, our total amount of state revenue, state aid is just over 35 million. So you can see that makes up for another big chunk of, basically another quarter of your budget is made up off of state aid. And then the third major category is other revenues, which is local receipts. And as I hope many of you know, after hearing all this for so many years, local receipts are revenues generated generally by the people that are behind us. Most of those fees go to offset our salaries. So alcohol licensing, common victular licensing, food inspections, marriage licenses, dog licenses, recreational fees, ambulance receipts, building permits. There's all sorts of data in the actual narrative, but that's an aggregate number, and we're expecting about a 5% growth in that. We would have assumed a little bit less, but I know that the council will approve a fees update bylaw this year. We did an entire rewrite of that bylaw last year to make sure that our fees were recouping the amount of money that we were paying out in terms of different services from the staff. So we rewrote the whole bylaw, so there's not a lot of areas in the fees where we're going to be able to jack up fees to make up our budget deficit. But there are a few in there, like ambulance receipts and a handful of other fees departments have said that need to be updated. So I do expect the council to update that during budget season. And so therefore, we did maintain that 5%, number in FY27. I should say technically the fourth revenue source are other available funds, net budget stabilization or other transfers. So if I go back up so I can read the fiscal year, let's see here. If you look in FY25 final, we used just over $3 million in one-time money that year. So that's what that number represents. In FY26, this fiscal year, we didn't use any one-time money. We are at a minimum assuming $117,000 in this budget, which is to drain the MEC stabilization fund, which still has about $450,000, and we're spreading that over 4 years. So you will see that transfer in there in our budget proposal for at least the next 4 years, assuming folks vote on this in the affirmative. And then the second line in here, we have this free cash. As you can see in 25 and 26, we didn't use any of it. But as you know, I'm proposing to use just over $2 million worth of free cash to ensure that the budget this year does not sustain any cuts to any services, to allow the elected officials and the boards and committees in the community to try to strategize on how to patch that funding gap over the next few years. And then enterprise funds are essentially what's called indirects. And really what those are is we're paying out of the operating budget all of the money for, say, our DPW employees as an expenditure, but their actual benefits come from the water, sewer, trash, and stormwater utilities. By statute and by state law, we have to make sure that we account for those revenues. This is exactly how the school department does it with their revolving funds as well. They pay out of their budget, the salaries and whatnot, but they usually go back and charge against that. We actually just take those indirects on an assumption from those enterprise funds, which is about $2 million, which actually then offsets $2 million worth of healthcare costs in account 910, which we'll get to later this afternoon. So those are your revenue sources, which essentially equates up to about $0.4 million budget. However, there are also assessments charged against the town, and that's what this section is down here at the bottom. So we have to pay back or pay out to sharing districts. Anybody that chooses to use school choice and goes to another district, state law dictates that we essentially transfer those per pupil costs to those districts. Same thing with state assessments. There's a whole bevy of state assessments like MAPC, there's a whole bunch of stuff that are baked into those assessments. Same thing with the county. We still have a county government in Norfolk County. The rest of the state, actually, most of the rest of Massachusetts does not have a county form of government, and so a lot of communities don't pay out that county assessment. But in Norfolk County, we do. Charter school assessment is the largest number by far, and that's also, again, state law dictates that if a student from Franklin goes to the charter school, that per pupil tuition gets sent from the school district to the charter school. And so you're looking at about just over $6 million in payments that go from our cherry sheets for state aid to the charter school. And then provision for abatements and exemptions is required by statute. That's what you have for overlay for the Board of Assessors for their abatements and exemptions. So people apply for a variety of abatements and exemptions that are, again, all etched out in state law for people with disabilities, veterans, a whole variety. There's dozens upon dozens of categories. People come in, they file for those abatements, and that money is generally under the Board of Assessors, and they use that there. We do expect in the future, as I've written about before, for that number to go up, but we feel confident that this year that number is stable. So when you add up all of the assessments and other votes, you're looking at about an $8 million deduction off of our state aid, essentially, and now you end up with a $152.5 million budget, just under a hair of it, $152.5 million overall budget. So that's the revenue sheet in less than 10 minutes. It's about as fast as I can probably do it. Does anybody on the Finance Committee have any questions about the revenue assumptions or anything behind any of those numbers?
I'll ask my every year question. Do we get any data from the charter school as to how they spend the money?
Nothing that I'm aware of directly to us. I know they publish an annual report by law every year, and if you go on the DESE website, I think they have an archive of the annual reports. But I don't believe they carve out in their annual report the exact $6,071,000 and then somehow do an analysis on that.
Let me ask another question. Do we know it costs $30,000, I'll pick it up, $30,000 for a public school kid in Franklin. Do we know what that number is for the charter school?
You might want to ask them on tomorrow night.
Oh, I will. I will.
Yeah, they might just be a little bit more exact and fluent with exactly how the charter school reports and these types of things.
And the other thing I'm curious about, it used to be pretty big that if the assessors don't pay out that $650, is it carryover? Does it become free cash?
Yeah.
Where's if nobody comes in, not happening, but 650 grand is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Do we ever get that back into the budget somewhere?
Yeah.
Because 3 years ago they paid out, I'm assuming they paid out 636. What I'm saying, we assigned 650,000 to the assessors, which I suspect is an absolutely good number, but they certainly don't pay it out every year.
Right.
Where does the excess go? Or does it just roll? Is it?
It's maintained.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Might as well just. Yeah.
As I recollect from my ancient time on this thing, that there are times when money comes back.
Yep. I'll dish the rock to go.
The Reader's Digest version, please.
Oh, okay. That's a good thing. Caution. Kevin Doyle, Director of Assessing to the Town of Franklin. The overlay account is raised annually. The balances that remain remain assigned each year. they become available in case there's not enough money, if there's an excess amount in one given year, they remain available because the state now allows us to draw from prior years should we go over in, say, the current year. So
Is there
some.
a number of years back that it's still, I mean, if we have some
Well,
left over from 1963,
Well, we maintained the
Well, that,
budget
yeah.
beginning in 1990, 1999?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also have to make a provision for anything that is still outstanding. It can't be released if we have taxes that are still outstanding. If they're in tax title, there's some assurance that they'll be collected eventually. But for like personal property accounts that are outstanding and real estate accounts that may not, for whatever reason, be in tax title after, for non-payment.
but as soon as all the taxes are collected and or resolved for a year, then that money is released back to the general fund?
It would have to be, voted for recommendation for release by the Board of Assessors, and then it could become available as surplus.
Right. So, without keeping it at the Reader's Digest level, the overlay can compile in an aggregate, but to Kevin's point, there are obligations through either the appellate tax board or other petitions on taxes, as well as other assumptions they may make. I will also say our senior tax work-off program is paid out of this as well. So there are a lot of other little things, and the Board of Assessors has exclusive authority over those revenues. So those are revenues that just can't be used everywhere else because of the variety of other statutory mechanisms. At some point it could be, but that's really at the Board of Assessors' discretion. And that's why you don't hear about all this very much, because it's not something that's readily available to the town council or the finance committee or capital. It's not a pot of money that we can just start using other places. It's pretty exclusively met. And we have had appellate tax cases that get held up, or if there's property in foreclosure or tax title, there's a whole series of other things that are out there that get occupied by that. But this money right here in the budget is predominantly for the abatements and exemptions that the board gives out that are in state law.
Anybody else?
Yeah. So on the investment income, I think this is part of the local receipts line. I think it was about $1 million. Just to better understand the assumptions there, thinking through geopolitical and macro environments right now, how sensitive are we kind of in that investment income to changes in interest rates? So should they go way up or go way down in the next 6 to 12 months? Are we still talking about kind of nearish $1 million, or is that drastically change?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So we are monitoring it with the people that manage those funds. Now, we don't have a lot of funds in high yield investments because we can't do that.
Right.
They're stabilization accounts. And the firms that manage those accounts and our trust accounts are working and investing based on market volatility. So I am constantly monitoring it every month. We will continue to do so. And when we choose what we're going to budget for or assess what we think it's going to come in next year, I may be a little bit willing to reduce it based on what's going on. So it is monitored. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to quickly say, 6 years ago, we lost a lot of revenue quickly in March of 2020. I can't even remember how we did it, but it's just, there's always going to be a global force that we probably react to. I would say in the inverse, also the positive. 6 years ago, interest rates were virtually nothing. We moved all of those accounts to high yield interest, savings accounts. We used all those investments, and kind of on a dime when interest rates went way up. We benefited from that. It's hard to say. I mean, there's always going to be geopolitical factors. I would say out of geopolitical factors, some of the biggest things are going to be electricity and fuel next year. To me, those are the things that are worrying me a little bit more than, more of the broader economic, part of things. But I totally understand the question. It's hard to obviously nail down.
Yeah, I mean, if your investment income goes way up, presumably we might have an offset on inflation on the
Correct.
expense side anyway. So
Right.
Great.
Right. It's like, do we want a recession to bring down costs from inflation? Or do we want good wages, low unemployment, and high costs of the growth? I don't know. I think you guys understand the dynamics well. It's tough.
Well, I was going down that line too. How was the excess funds invested? Do you have short-term, medium-term, long-term? And what's the yield that you're looking at between them?
So that's a great question as well, but I'm going to need a little time to get that information for you. I don't have that readily off the top of my head, so I can either start looking at it now and I can get back to you.
Okay, and what's the balance you're assessing the interest income off of?
That'll also have to get back to you.
Next question, on page 11 of your narrative, Jamie, you mentioned about $1 million loss in tax levy.
Yep.
So what's that translate to, $1,000?
$1,000?
Those are revenue? Is that just
No, it's $1 million in tax levy.
a tax levy?
Levy. So
Is it-
right up
Is it cash or is it just the, based on which?
property value.
state?
Property value. So if you look up here on this top, just these top lines, Tom, right? You've got prior year tax levy, which is what it was, and then you see this new growth.
Okay, so it changed the new growth, but it moved up to the base.
I don't know what your question is, but I'll just say that the new growth in here, if you look at FY25, we assumed 1.17 million in new growth. Okay?
Correct.
That means what people were doing were businesses were retrofitting their buildings, residential homeowners were adding kitchens, pools, like whatever, right? And so that's a standard number in our budget every year. So what I always try to articulate for many years is, if you have $1 million in new growth in your budget, that means you need residential and commercial property owners to be doing those property improvements to their property, building a house, building a building, maybe a residential structure, it may be a new building, right? You need to maintain that level of growth every year in your property tax portfolio town-wide in order to keep that line item flat every single year. What we've seen in the last 6 years.
On the next year rolls into the base.
That's right. The
So
next
it's not
year.
lost.
Well, it's not lost on that property that did that valuation. So if you were a property in this 1.171 million, you're correct. That property, if you did a kitchen and a pool, and you got another $150,000 worth of valuation on your property, that does not go away unless the market changes that property value. However, is what the new growth shows is that development growth and property investment has gone down in the last
I
6 years.
understand that, but that lot is not
Correct.
really lost revenue.
That's right. That's right.
That's where it comes across as lost revenue.
But you have to acknowledge the lost revenue and new growth because people are doing fewer improvements to their property.
Right.
That's where the loss in revenue.
I understand. It's a change in the assumption of what the new growth number is.
Correct.
I understand that.
Yep.
Question on the charter school. How is that organized? Is it organized as a nonprofit?
So that's a question for
It's-
tomorrow night on the Zoom.
All right.
It
Be
is.
here tomorrow night.
It's a public school.
Yeah,
I don't know-
Yeah, so some charter schools are also private equity, run by private equity firms.
Yeah.
So if it's a public charity, you can get information through the AG's office
Sure.
on that. And on the assessor's account, you mentioned that you have a worksheet of the balance in that. Is there any way we can see it?
Sure.
It sounds like a
You wanna
revolving
read-
account or some type of account. There's a balance in there. Is it on the financial statements?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. It's in our financial statement. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
This is a question that, I know we talked about this before, so I'm sorry.
No, it's
I don't have my copious notes from the other meetings. With the free cash, we had that meeting and we talked about free cash and we talked about the enterprise fund and what those were comprised of. At that meeting, there was the total number of what was at this time available in free cash, right? Is that the full 2029 or is there more and we're only applying the 2029?
There's a little more, and we're only applying this amount to cover the budget deficit.
Right, okay. I don't think that's exactly clear to people, or will be clear to people, that this, because it's kind of just shows up in here, so it sort of looks a little bit like just another level of revenue, money that we're getting from somewhere, not money that we're taking from ourselves to put in there. So I think that that's important for people to understand, that if you took this number out, we would actually have a $2 million deficit, right? And then so if we reformatted this, it would say $2 million deficit, and then at the very bottom, there would be a line item to add $2 million in, right? So that,
Right here at the bottom, Shannon, you're 100% correct. Where you see this hash mark, right there, it would say 2.029 million, and it would be in the red.
right.
You're
So we
correct.
are, I think that's, as we start this out, I think it's critically important, as we go through all of these budgets, that we understand that we still have a $2 million deficit.
Correct.
We plugged it with these funds that we have, but the way that it's, I'm not disparaging the way that this is written up.
Understand?
I'm just saying that the way it looks now, it looks like, oh, we're good.
Yeah.
Cool, right? And it's not cool. The other question I have similarly, the enterprise funds, again, we talked about this, and I have the number written somewhere, but what is the total number in that bank? I know that we're applying 2 million here.
Oh, so
But do you remember what the total number is?
for the enterprise funds,
Yeah.
what they returned, that would, Linda,
Oh.
that's just, in a second, we can get that for you.
Okay.
Those are
So
for
this is just-
She answered this
Retained
last time
earnings,
too,
right?
so I'm so sorry that I don't have my
That's
notes.
okay. So the portion that you see here on the control sheet, the indirects, that's a portion of people that salaries get paid out of the enterprise funds. That's the cost for mailing out water, sewer, trash bills, the postage, their benefits. We're allowed to take a percentage of that and put it back into the general fund. And I have a calculation of how I determine that.
Oh, okay, so it's only for that part because the rest of the enterprise funds have to stay in there
Yes.
for use only in those,
Correct.
for that
Correct.
thing.
Yes.
But
So-
this is the amount we're allowed to pull
You're
from
allowed
that.
to, yes.
Got it,
Correct.
then I don't need that number. I don't need that number. Thank you.
Yep.
I always think of it as if Bruce spends 10% of his time managing the sewer department, then 10% of his salary could come from the sewer revenue.
That's why we do it.
Simplistic.
That's why we have to do it. And in the DPW narrative, we itemize out that information about how much assumption is coming from each staff member from each different account.
Anybody?
Just one comment. So the other thing, just to keep in mind, so I know we're looking at that, some of these numbers are proposed. So at what point are they corrected with accurate? And just
You mean like the state aid numbers?
well, the state aid, you know, some of those other estimates that we don't know, because I know there's a lot of conversation about looking at what state aid is across the state and whether, you know, it's going to be approved at a higher rate and whatever. So just kind of thinking long-term, what does that look like, and when do we anticipate those numbers to be finalized so that the proposed can then be finalized?
Great question. So, couple things. One, up until 2 years ago, and this is how most cities and towns do it, and I think everybody's under the budget crunch, so I think a lot of cities and towns are trying to get the most up-to-date number. The last 2 fiscal years, we would adapt the budget through the process to reflect the House budget and/or the Senate budget, and then use those highest numbers as our assumption going into the final vote, okay, on the local budget document here in June. The last 2 years, that didn't work out well for us because then the state final budget came in lower than what our local aid was those last 2 years. Wasn't a lot of money, But I think one year was like 66,000, another year was like 48,000, like whatever it was the last year. So then we have to come back in the fall and make those reductions or move things around to try to cover that revenue source. Before the last couple years, Franklin did it this way for decades, as well as most cities and towns. You usually have a fall budget session, and we just had ours November 18th this past year. And what we would do is we would wait until the state gets done with its budget, theoretically on July 1st. Sometimes the state budget goes until way later. But you always come back sometime in October or November and you do a recap, okay? And by law, we have to do that recap to show DOR all of our numbers, assumptions, and expenditures are copacetic. And then that we have to do that before the town council considers setting the tax rate in December. So this is a very frequent occurrence in most cities and towns, even in our form of government, to come back in the fall. So I can't tell you, obviously, what the state budget's going to look like. They're going to have their own budget problems. Obviously, they're going to make a budget this year that does not reflect any of the ballot question issues coming up in November, so those things will be dealt with down the road. But I think what we'll have is a situation where we will do our budget here, and then whenever they come out with state aid and they finalize the state budget, we'll get a final cherry sheet, and then we will come back in November, the meeting probably right before the tax rate setting, and just look and see where we're at and make any changes if need be.
So these are more conservative then?
These are definitely more conservative.
Okay.
I would definitely anticipate the House will go higher than the governor.
Yeah.
The Senate will go higher than the House. Traditionally, the legislature always funded the highest amount of all three branches,
Yeah.
but the last 2 years that was different. I don't really think there's a big reason for that, but I would note, as we've talked about with Chapter 70, I hope you watched the 2 hours of DESI before the council a couple weeks ago. Our growing affluence and our growing land values and the money that we have in Franklin puts us in a category where we have the ability to pay. So our state aid has flatlined completely, and it has since I've been here for over 10 years. It is completely flatlined. So even though the fact that we lost revenue last year is actually not an indication that somehow the legislature cut money, it's actually directly related to the fact that we have a greater ability to pay, and the way the Chapter 70 formula now works is more aimed at trying to fix some of the underperforming school issues in some of those districts. So, hey, Student Opportunity Act, it is what it is. We knew right away that that wasn't going to be a panacea for the financial issues of the town, but we knew that 10 years ago. So, so that wasn't a shock. But we would come back in November and recalculate, or October. We could do it in September, October. We could do it any time after the state.
And then at that time, so, kind of talking about what she had mentioned about the free cash, so would we then reduce our amount of free cash that we're utilizing if those numbers come up, or
You
like
could.
who has that discretion when we get to that point?
Well, the council will have obviously has the final.
So do they recertify the budget? Is that what they do?
They just vote. I mean, we could go in every month and they could vote the budget and change it because of our form of government, right? If you're in Medway, Bellingham, Rentham, whatever, they got to have a whole town meeting.
Right.
So it does give our community a little bit more flexibility to try to move budget around depending on when it is. So they could, if the budget gets done in the state on July 1st, and we have an increase in local aid, just $100,000.
Yep.
You're correct. We could go back in, the council could go back in to that 2.029 million and say, we're going to deduct $100,000 in the need for free cash because we got $100,000 more in state aid. They could absolutely do that. Okay.
Thanks.
Or conversely, you can fund another expense.
You could.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You could fund another expense. Yeah.
Just a reminder to us, talking to that, either one will,
Sorry, Steve.
Steve will be in thing.
Should you just give them public comment? I didn't know.
Skip those. Any other questions?
Yep.
Jamie, not about the numbers you have on the screen at the moment, but I was reading your message, and I clicked the link about our schools and the ranking of our schools. And I think it said in the message that we were in the top 20 And then I looked at the list and I got confused. I think we're 64th.
Yeah.
Is that? am I
If you
reading
read the
right?
message clearly, it says in the districts over 1,400 students at the high school.
Ah, okay.
I know because there is a difference, and I'm not being cute. Dover-Sherburne is not an apple to apple with Franklin.
Sure.
So you really need to have a district that has a community of 25, 30, 35,000 plus citizens, and there are a lot of reasons embedded in that, right? So you can't compare us to Bolton, you can't compare us to Harvard.
And that's fair.
They're totally.
Do you know the denominator on that number then? Because the list is 150, but as I scan through it,
Yeah.
like, is it 20 to 30?
I don't remember that. I just remember that, when you look at the top 20 districts that have a large high school, you're talking Milton, Andover, you're starting to get into those communities that I hear a lot of buzz around all the time, Natick, Needham, Wellesley, all those communities kind of maybe are partially aspirational figures. But when you look at those towns, I think it's worth celebrating the achievement of the students that are actually performing in a very large district at that level in the aggregate. And we think of ourselves as not in that pantheon of some of the great school districts in Massachusetts, but I think that when you consider all the factors, including student performance of a district our size, we perform pretty well. And I would just say that when you look at those comparable districts as well, they have a tax levy 10, 15, 20, 25% larger than ours. You look at Andover, they have like a $250, probably $275 million budget. So our students are performing at a very high level on what I would think of as like the market basket of cities and towns, like more for your dollar type of deal, as opposed to really high property taxes, really high property values, communities that many people struggle to afford to be in.
Yeah, certainly not trying to take away from our school. I just think it's an interesting paradigm to say that we have this great school, and yet we have this budget problem that we can't solve. We don't have enough teachers. Like the two statements stop making a bunch of sense together. That we need to add a bunch of things into the school budget. There's a bunch of administrative staff and then getting added when we're saying we're a top school. But then when you look at the list, as I'm scanning it, of this 150, I don't know, most of them are under 1,000.
Yeah.
So maybe it's top 20 of 40, but it's kind of middle of the road in our size.
And we're just Eastern Massachusetts in that block, too.
Sure,
So-
it's not like a top, we're not top 3, right?
And you probably never will be.
Sure, but
it's just I was just trying to be, and I know you're very enthusiastic and positive about the schools, but it's just, I hear a lot of negativity all the time, not from you guys, but in the community about we need more, our schools are struggling, there's issues. Lexington just laid off 64 teachers last week, middle of the year. They're one of the highest performing districts and one of the largest districts in Massachusetts. Brookline is also one of the best districts in Massachusetts, and they're going for, strap on your seatbelt, a $23.5 million override, where they're going to lay off 210 teachers. So looking at a $2 million budget gap is, in my view, almost like a sweet spot right now, and is actually probably good news. Because if you're looking at Brookline and you're going to be voting in the spring on a $24 million override, and that's 200 teachers, what if that doesn't pass? And nobody in Brookline seems to ask, how did we get into this problem? You already have a $25 million, $24, $23 million budget gap. Lexington just laid off teachers mid-year. When you look around at even those districts, they're having a hard time. So even though they're performing well and they're in the top 6, 10, and they're the districts that everybody wants to be a part of and they drive property values, even they're struggling heavily to fund everything that they want. Even Wellesley last year laid off AP, advanced placement. So I say that contextually because I think we think of it in Franklin, but if you look outside and around a lot of cities and towns, other districts are having a lot of financial problems too.
Sure. And then I guess just a clarification, I think this is true, but I want to confirm. In this proposed budget you have up, there's no additional contribution to snow and ice. Is that correct?
Technically, that's correct.
Okay.
There is some restorative money that was proposed in here for the DPW for some crosswalk painting, tree trimming, road maintenance. I think it was about $280,000 roughly in that number. and I'd written in the narrative that given this snow and ice year,
Yeah.
in the final budget in May and June, I might just put that into snow and ice to be better safe than sorry for next year. And
Just to
unfortunately for
call
the
out, like,
DPW, we can't. We
Right
just-
now,
Yeah.
like, it's 200K of tree trimming and sidewalk painting or snow and ice.
Yes.
Not
Not both,
Like,
correct.
we wanted to trim trees and not have snow, that would cost more than this budget.
Correct.
And then similarly,
Yes, correct.
like Chromebooks are also not included. There's about $500,000 of technology
Yep.
costs buried in here that, like, I think as Shannon just pointed out, the $2 million plug we have, that is the money we would typically use
Right.
for Chromebooks and the other 260 or 360,000 of the 2020 replacement cycle for all the teachers and whatnot. So there are, like, even with a $2 million deficit, there is another $700K at a minimum that, like, we know we need to pay that's not here yet.
Correct. And yep, these issues have been, I know for some of you, this may be your first couple times, but these are issues that we've discussed for years. The schools did maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6, somewhere after we bought the $1 million worth of Chromebooks in 2020. Superintendent Hearn was still here. She did commit to about $250,000 in the school budget annually to buy Chromebooks, as the council at one point kind of pushed back. And then I think you're seeing the impacts of the failed overrides, where when you lose that money, it may not have been on the list to cut, right? But all the other cuts force other choices.
Sure.
And so I think that's where we're going down that path. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I guess just kind of
Yeah.
bringing the point to conclusion, like, I think
Absolutely.
we're looking at a $3 million budget deficit at a minimum, maybe more. But, like, as we go through it, to treat it as 0 is misleading or confusing ourselves. To treat it as 2 million is still kind of not quite there. 3 million is probably still a conservative number.
Yeah.
We're not contributing to any of the other stabilization funds or things like that, like we should be, like the fire truck we just, like all the things that we know will happen. We're not preventing any of those from being total surprises that we aren't ready for.
Absolutely correct. 100%.
Can I just add on to that? I think it's a good point that you're saying that. I think the challenge would become, if we're talking about an override or what the number is, it's not really, 2 million isn't the best number, but some people will be like, well, we should choose between tree trimming and snow removal. Like, maybe we do have to be lean. Like, I think some people are not in the boat of, let's make us as service-filled as we have been in the past. So it's good to just kind of know that range.
Yeah, I guess I was not trying to tie that number to an override at all, so much as over the next 4 nights, like, I think it behooves us to try to find $3 million we can remove from this budget. Like, to actually be balanced instead of being quasi-balanced with a big plug and a bunch of gaps that don't make sense. Like, we know they're fake. We know we're gonna get asked for Chromebooks in 6 months for free cash, and, like, that's gonna happen every year, and it doesn't really make sense to really be a free cash type thing. I mean, like, you can kind of keep going, like police cruisers and taser payment we know we have to make, and, like, there's a whole set of things not included, like, not considering override at all, just looking at this year, we got a problem that, like, we should try to solve. We won't get all the way there, we probably won't get to 0, but putting all of our free cash here is an odd paradigm.
Gotcha.
Just for the record, it's not all the free cash, right? So you guys did recommend, well, there was another $1+ million that the council expended for free cash. And then there is another $151,000 that is still in that difference. And then the council has not voted on the OPEB transfer. So you still have $600,000 in discretionary free cash after you use this, just to be.
And then there's another, I forget what it was, 1.5 going to OPEB in this budget?
No,
There was something in there.
150,000.
For 150,000, less useful. Sure can't add a 0?
It's the whole budget.
But yeah, so, like, sure,
Yeah.
there are some
Yeah.
things, but I think those are the things that you start to say, like, are we cutting, right? Like, do we not do
Yeah.
those things to make it?
That's right. Those are the absolutely, well said series of kind of choices before you guys and the council in the next couple
We have a
months.
lot of people waiting, don't we?
I think that's a question we need to answer as we go into the budget. Are we going to be okay with some free cash, knowing there's a structural deficit within the budget? Or do we say to the people that we're at zero, and now we have to figure it out? So I think, as opposed to nickel and diamond all the way through, do we make a collective decision that's what we're going to try to find? I'm just throwing it out. I'm the new guy.
Makes sense.
It's great. I mean, Tom's got a great point. I mean,
Are we set now with everybody?
Well, I'm just about a question.
Yeah, so
Anybody
that's a
wants-
discussion point, right?
Yeah,
discussion point.
Yes, before you joined us, I think 2 sessions ago, maybe a session ago, I asked Jamie if everyone would be prepared to tell me what they were gonna cut from their budget, operating not on a we'll figure out how to find it later basis, but rather on a this is what we have, this is all you get, and you have to figure out how to fit that budget, what you want in that budget, because we do end up with later, there's a different session where we talk about here's the free cash we have, and all these departments come up and ask for things like tasers and Chromebooks, and it's kind of this reverse budgeting situation where Ryan, to Ryan's point at other meetings, is why are we doing this now? Why isn't this in the upfront budget? If everybody asked for everything they wanted upfront, and then we knew exactly what people were going to want for the year, they know what tasers they need, they know what police cars they're going to have to ask for, they know what, all these expenses that we get hit with requests for later, those are all up front, and we have a real number that we actually have to get to without using our, or we don't use our $2 million. We save it in the side savings account for things that come up. Oh my goodness, we need $750,000 for the senior center, right? Like that was a real thing that needed to be done. We don't have any reserve cash, but if we're operating with this budget where there's an actual, at the line that doesn't have a dash, instead it has a negative 2 million, then we now have to go through this budgeting process this week to find that 2 million. And then we have 2 million set aside for the other stuff. That's the discussions we've had. Just to catch you up to
So
speed.
what's the strategy on the override? Is it for November or is it next year?
so there's no strategy on an override. That's your decision to make, not mine. That's the council's decision to make and the school committee's decision to make if they ever want to do one again. I think the strategy here, Tom, and Shannon did a really good job summarizing, I think, maybe the last 6 to 8 months or so, and now we're here. The reason I proposed using $2 million in free cash was because the tasers, cruisers, fire gear, the sped van, the most critical stuff was funded already through free cash, so that stuff is at least safe. It's not like our officers don't have the gear that they need or our firefighters, et cetera. The strategy here was simple. After 2 really, really vicious, toxic override conversations in this community where there really was not a very clear consensus, both votes were 1% losses. They were very close. If you go down the street to Easton's override lost 70% no. Kind of a clear message. Here you had 2 votes that were nearly 50-50. It was only split by 150, 200 votes, whatever the difference were. That's very close. And as I've said before, that was with really very little civic outreach to the community, right? And of course, everybody comes to me, and so they complain about all the cuts, whether they're schools, senior center, doesn't matter. And I can tell you from a lot of people, there was a lot of people in this community that did not know what was going on. They didn't know what was on the chopping block. I know some people differ with that opinion of mine, but I know that for a fact because I've been in the senior center, I talked to the veterans, I talked to everybody. They did not see a lot of what was coming, particularly the ambulance loss, a lot of that. That was ultimately a responsibility of the elected and civic leaders to go out and talk about that stuff with people. And I still believe that today that there's a possibility that if that had happened, maybe one of those overrides would have been, would have passed. There's no strategy right now in override, but I thought it was prudent for the I thought it was prudent to use $2 million in free cash this year to avoid more contentious debate about whether cutting cops, firemen, schools, nurses at the senior center, do we cut another day at the library? You know, all of this becomes kind of a tough civic conversation. I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school here. I think these have been really, really hard times the last year and a half, very emotional for a lot of people, very tense. And by using $2 million in free cash this year, it gives the finance committee, the school committee, and the town council a breather year. Instead of talking about cuts and talking about whether we're going to get rid of SROs and the therapy dogs, the ambulance, or whatever, or schools, it gives everybody more time to strategize with exactly what is it that you want to do to fix this problem. And the way Shannon and everybody else articulated it was really well done. I mean, same thing with Ryan. I mean, I wrote it in the narrative. It's not like this is hidden. I said there's a downside to using free cash, no question. But, you know, at some point, there's no money to go around. And I'm going to say it, I think I'm going to be fairly confident, you're going to be, without making drastic cuts, you know, without cutting school, you're going to have to cut schools if you're going to make cuts at some point. And I can tell you, if you go through the big five, there's not a lot of areas. The fire department is going to be clear. You're losing the third ambulance if you cut personnel. If you cut police officers, you're losing all the SROs, the therapy dogs, and you're down to your bare minimum shift. If you cut the DPW, I think I don't need to explain, you know, what we just went through. You're just trimming. We have almost no money for road work anymore. So I'm just saying, once you get down into the weeds of this, it's going to be very, very hard to do that without cuts that aren't going to be noticed within the community. And so by using the free cash, we give everybody, especially a new council and a new school committee, we give everybody a year to have an honest conversation with the community about, well, do you want to make these cuts? And maybe that's where you want to go because of the affordability issues. Maybe, to Nowie's point, maybe the consensus is on a $1 million override. Maybe that's what people can get around. I don't know. But I think the idea here was to give some time and space to everybody.
No, and I fully understand that, but we have to go on this with our eyes wide open.
Absolutely.
That, you know, we're using some money, and as you know, it's going to be a multiplying effect as we go out each year. That's why, you know, you save money here, and then if you spend it, it keeps growing.
I guess, like, to build on that thought, right, like, I think if I understood what you were proposing, asking, it's what is our goal, right, coming out of this? And, like, I guess just looking at those things we were talking about, I would suggest that we need at least $1 million in free cash after we're done. Because we know we're going to have to pay for police cruisers every year, we have to replace some. We know we need $460,000 in technology this year. Like, these are not hidden from us, they're not one-offs, they're every year, we kind of know them. And then I think, and this is personal perspective, but I think we need to be adding to the ice stabilization, the road stabilization fund, separate from trimming trees. It's been super wet the last 2 years. Like, this spring is already very wet. Trees grow a ton when that happens, and we can't just not do it. It's a hazard to the community. So like those things alone roughly add up to $1 million. So I would propose, like, if we can end the process with $1 million in free cash, we're well positioned to then be able to pay for real surprises in whatever it is, 4 months when we do it again, and then in January when we do it again. Like, those can actually be things we weren't anticipating instead of just money we knew was already earmarked for stuff that we knew we were going to have to pay for, but we couldn't put in the budget. I don't know if other people had other things that, like, from the last, whatever it is, however long, 400 years and, you know. Yeah, but, like, you know, there's other stuff, right, that you guys, everybody here has some tenure and has heard through these conversations. Like, what else are we missing that we know is going to come up that's not really, hey, the refrigerator broke in the school, it needs to be replaced. Like, that you can't necessarily predict. The cruisers are every year. You know, doesn't snow every year. I guess maybe the ice is not, but we drained it entirely, right? The tech is every year.
So I will say, I was just looking at the free cash history. Historically, over the last 4 years, it's been over $4 million. So we're going to have free cash next year to pay for the Chromebooks. Like, we know we're going to at least have 500,000. I mean, it's going to be well more than that. So, like, I don't want to worry about the Chromebook in this year's and this year, like, I don't want to resort, like, that 2 million, I understand what it's doing. I don't feel like I need to break it down to $1 million. I think we would cause, I guess that would go towards current year cap, which we looked at capital, and nothing, we said yes to everything that was on fire. So if we saved $1 million, it would go towards the existing list that we already reviewed and said not yet.
Except for the $1 million can we kicked. The fire truck from last meeting that like we don't have any money for, we haven't figured out. Right? Because like we used all our free cash. Otherwise that would have been a perfect,
Yeah.
hey, we have $1 million fire truck, surprise, the chassis broke. Let's pay out of our surprise rainy day fund for surprises. But then we looked and said, oh wait, we used all our.
Which I guess would be a thing, would you rather, that's a would you rather.
Yeah.
Just quickly, and then we'll move on, George, I know you're ready. So I do think that you bring up a good point. We've been talking about this since I joined a couple of months ago, of nice to have versus needs to have. And if we're looking at $2 million that we're trying to cut from the budget to alleviate the use of free cash, I don't think it's a heavy lift across the number of departments. I know, like, looking at contracted services, what do we contract with? So we talk about nice to have versus needs to have. When we have extra funding, we have a lot of things that are nice to have, right? But when we don't, we have to take hard looks at things, and our managers get paid a good salary to manage. So I do think it's fair to say, this is where we are, what are our needs to have versus nots, and then what are contracted services that we can bring in-house, because things are done cheaper when you bring them in-house, they're done at a better quality when you bring them in-house. So what are those things that we can do to alleviate some of those expenses in each budget? And I don't think 2 million is a heavy lift across the number of departments that we have in order to preserve the free cash. But again, I know that you get the list, right? And you get what department heads want and what they feel that they need, but I don't know what the process is.
Sure.
Like, do you then go back and say, like, are we looking at ways, so like when I do my budget, I have to look at ways to meet a number because I don't have the ability to charge people more money. So I have to be creative and say, okay, well, we contract for this service to the tune of 1.2 million. However, I could bring in 2 staff members and do this in-house for 800,000. So I guess that's kind of what I hear you guys saying, and I think this has been our common narrative for the last several months about what that looks like.
I think that couldn't be a better transition right into the board and committee and department budgets, because I think we're going to realize that there aren't very many examples of that. I think you probably realize that because you've done this for 11 years, and Natalie and others. Yes, we do that, and just for the record, everybody behind me probably knows that, like, they don't walk in with like their utopian vision of what they want,
Well,
right?
these are the smaller ones, right?
Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, they come in with a level service budget, right? So they don't come in with their wish list. Okay, if they came in with their wish list, I'd have 8 firefighters on the list, I'd have 8 more police officers on the list, I'd have this bonanza of stuff that nobody knows is even remotely realistic. And so it's not like what's up here. What's up here, I tell them to basically tell them to give me the same budget they had last year, contractual obligations, which is basically collective bargaining. I think what you all know is the overwhelming amount of this budget is personnel. So, like, we've already done departmental reforms on every single department. Some of you that have been around will be happy to talk about them all in detail again. Police has reformed themselves, fire's reformed themselves. I was the senior center director for 5 or 6 months. We reformed the entire senior center. We've redid all of our collective bargaining agreements. We've maintained cost of living adjustments at 2.5%, which is the best we could do in a highly unionized environment with police, teachers, fire. Everybody's on the same page with full equity. Do we do some things like regionalization and take advantage of grants when we can and some other reforms and projects? Sure. We could have Pam Vickery talk about, our mail machine and exactly the metrics she shows versus purchase versus lease. I mean, we can tell all those stories to you over the course of the next 3 days. We're happy to do it. But I think you're going to find, and I say this with a lot of confidence, you're going to find it very hard to get $2 million without laying off personnel in the big 5 budgets. It comes down to schools, police, fire, DPW facilities. Everybody else are 1 to 3 person departments. You're not laying off the town clerk, you're not laying off the planning department, you can't lay off the conservation commissioner, can't get rid of the procurement official, you can't get rid of the finance official. At some point, you just have to realize There's only one deputy town administrator you can pinata. At some point, there's only a little bit in there that you can do to say, well, we can't do that. And I say that with confidence because I look at you guys and I know y'all have been through this budget a lot. It's not easy. Our expense line items are very modest. Our police and fire are a fraction of those overall budgets. And as you guys all know, the schools already proposed cuts to their budget this year to try to maintain their costs at a certain level. And at some point, healthcare and a variety of other issues just become, really expensive endeavors. So I would say that, instead of talking about it in hypotheticals, let's just dig right into the budget and let's just get into the department by departments, and you guys can make your own lists of things that you want to cut, and maybe by Thursday or in May or June, when you have the finance committee meetings, then you guys can decide at the end of this week, do you want to think about it for another month? Do you want to make a recommendation? Do you have a list of stuff? So anyways, really quickly, the next page after the control sheet for folks watching at home is what we call the voting document. And this is just a summary of the expenditures by salaries and expenses for each department. So what we're going to do tonight is go through each one of these in detail, line item by line item, and we'll go through, and if anybody has questions, now's the time to ask them. So
Just before we go line item by line,
Yeah.
what is the current free cash balance less the amount here?
So it's 151,000 plus.
51,000.
Did I say that right?
No, I did it wrong. You said it right.
I did? 151,000? 152,000. Okay, that's fine. I bet you rounded up.
He's the budget.
Yeah. No, I'm usually the one that rounds up. He's usually the one that's on the tank.
It's $11.
$11. So it's 151,000.
Okay.
In addition to that, the 451,000 for the OPEB contribution has not been ratified by the council. So if you needed that OPEB money that would be going to the OPEB trust, if you needed that for another capital line, another capital project, you could. So essentially you have about 600,000 left in free cash after this 2 million,
Sure.
plus the money that was already spent as part of your tier 1 recommendation. And
Yeah,
then,
I guess just going back to
Yeah.
what is our goal, right? I was just proposing one, but if it was $1 million, there is most of that. We'd only be looking now for 400K.
that's right.
Right? But I think it behooves us to have a goal versus just review and say looks great.
I'll tell you what, why don't we get into the department budgets and actually see if there's money out there?
Yeah.
That makes sense. I gotta say, I've been on this committee 11 and 12 years. Combined, all that time, we haven't spent that much time on that page.
Which is great.
Combined, I know.
It is, no, it's fantastic.
Which is good.
It is very good.
We have one change in order. Kathy Liberty,
Oh, yeah.
she has an appointment somewhere or other. So we're gonna move her up from
Hopefully it's not a public health
the tail
disaster.
end of from the tail wagging the dog to the head of the dog. So please come up. So you're looking at, I think
510, right? 510.
the budget is on page 95.
Yep. So,
I'm online, I don't know where it is.
page 94 on the PDF.
510.
Numerical order.
If you use the online book, you can just click on the link that says Board of Health and the table of contents.
Did you print that for us? It was in this packet, right?
It's in this packet. Yes, it is.
541, it's toward the end.
Yep.
So,
Madam Chair, on the PDF, it's one certain nine.
okay, so the department number 510, the Board of Health, here again, this is a great example. We spell it out, department head, administrative personnel, and then we have in here the public health nurse, half of which is required by state statute. And then we have an expense line item, vehicle allowance, other contractual services, which in Kathy's case is food inspections, which is required by law.
Keith listening, oh, okay.
And then you can see a bunch of administrative line items in here, $500 for office supplies, office equipment, whatever. The big change here is, this is one of those areas, I think that was mentioned, maybe Jen mentioned it, where after COVID, we took advantage of a regional grant system where there's so much federal money around public health. We created the Metacomet Public Health District with Norfolk and Rentham. But that grant we anticipate to expire in the next year or two. If the income tax drawdown goes through, I'll guarantee you this will be one of the first things. This might not even make the actual budget with the income tax, and I know that they've already cut some of the money at the state level to fund these regional public health collaboratives. So we saw an increase in here of just over about $65,000 to pay for the other half of the part-time nurse, as well as our food inspection program. And just for the folks at home who are watching, we also put in the budget the exact spreadsheet with all of the individual employees within that department. We put their salaries. We have it broken down by base pay. If there were stipends or other pay, there'd be a category here. We put in the total amount of pay dates. We put in the salary, the hourly rates. And then Evan also adds in here offsets, which are interdepartmental offsets between other departments, because some of the employees that are permanent clerks on the first floor actually staff multiple departments. If you were to look back, I think, to George's original tenure 12 years ago, we had maybe 4 or 5 staff members down in the permitting office. Today we have 2. So that's both a success in hiring great people, where we've been able to cross-train them to work on conservation planning, health, and inspections. On the other hand, when one person's on vacation, or if there's somebody out on medical leave, we only have 2 staff members down there to really cover the administrative capabilities of really 4 departments. So we transparently put it all right out there for people to see. All of the numbers are right there, and Kathy's here. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
You want to tell us where you're going to give us $100 grand?
No, that's Jamie's job.
That's actually their job.
That's your job.
Just tell us about, again, Reader's Digest version, if you remember Reader's Digest. What you do, I'm curious as to how many food establishments, for instance, that you expect in town and that kind of stuff.
Sure, let me just grab my narrative. So basically our core functions are to conduct biannual inspections of approximately 120 food service establishments and 18 retail food establishments, like your typical convenience stores. These are done twice a year. Then we also regulate the tobacco use, so we do a lot of inspections for the tobacco permitted retail stores as well. We're required to review all engineered plans for proposed septic system installations. There's a lot that goes with that, so I won't bore you to tears about septic systems. But we do a lot of community outreach as well. We do women's health expos, the health fair, spring fair, fall fair, food clinics, first aid classes, stop the bleed. But moving on more to permitting, like you said, for the chair, we also do enforce the state sanitary code, which means when we get housing complaints, we have to go out and do housing inspections, nuisance inspections. We also permit and inspect public pools and spas, which we have approximately 11. Permitting inspection of recreational camps, that's done seasonally, so that'd be about 11, depends how many apply. Permitting inspection of tanning establishments, mobile food trucks, body art facilities, which we don't have here. And we review all plan review for new food establishments that are coming in. And we do a lot more than all of that, but that's just, like you asked the chair, what we do as far as inspections go.
Right. questions?
Yeah. A lot of your services are billable.
The permit applications are, yes, we have a fee schedule.
You do have a fee schedule and how much of, and I don't have the detail for all permits and stuff like that, so how much of your expenses are offset by your permit?
I don't know, I would have to run a report for that.
I'm gonna guess, Tom, maybe about just a ballpark guess to give you an idea, probably around the 10% area.
10% of her expenses are reimbursable?
I say that for salaries. I say that of her whole budget.
Okay.
She's probably going to bring in, I mean, Linda can probably look it up quickly, but you might want to get the list ready to go of each department, just to have it handy.
Yeah.
But you're probably you're probably looking at somewhere around that range, just 10, 20%. It's not like you're talking 80%. And that's probably going to be the same among most departments.
Anybody else?
I would just thank you. Your write-up was very clear and full budget message.
You're welcome.
It's very quiet. Thank you. Now go to your whatever is next.
Hope everything works out, Kathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will just work our way down this document.
Let's go back to 111.
Department, which is related over here. Town council, I assume you're speaking to them? Jane?
Yeah, actually, I mean, they already took a cut. They took a $1,500 cut in 2025. So they used to be at $7,000, now they're at $5,500, and this pays for dues to the MMA as well as conference fees for the counselors to go to the annual conference or other trainings that they may want to go to, like the finance committee has a seminar and stuff like that. So,
Do they usually use that conference fee?
yeah, one counselor went this year. 2 counselors went the previous 2 or 3 years. Usually a couple people go every year. Which?
Anybody else? No? All right, moving on. Town administration.
So what you have here is
Nice budget.
a level service budget across the board. Obviously, the one thing in here that's returned to my proposal is the assistant town manager at about $190,000. I would just, if people have questions, happy to answer them. Just for comparative sake, our assistant superintendent, the superintendent has 2. And at least the direct superintendent, Ms. Rogers, salary proposal for next year is $178. So this number is not too far off from market. If you look at towns like Dedham, Norwood, Needham, Natick, they're all going to be up in that 180, 175, 180, 185, 190, getting close to $200,000 salary.
Anybody?
So, can I just, this is just a general question.
Sure.
Not necessarily about this. Where does the deputy thing come from? Because didn't it used to be, why is it not, is this a loaded question?
No, not a loaded question at all.
I'm just-
It's funny.
I'm just curious because it's always been assistant, right? Like, so I'm just curious where this deputy thing came from?
I will be honest, it was a Jeff Nutting thing. He called everybody deputies. Some communities do that, some don't. I don't know what the over-under is. I think you got deputy chiefs, you got this deputy, and I think we just do deputies in our comp and class study.
Because we used to, oh, go ahead.
If I could, I believe it has to do with the size of the town, population.
Oh, okay. Because I know, and I'm just curious
Yeah.
more than anything. I'm not, this isn't a real question.
I think we decided when there was assistants and there were deputies and there was a mix of them throughout the entire budget, or throughout all the departments. And so when we did the compensation and classification study in 2022,
Yeah.
the consultant said, can you pick one or the other and make them all consistent? And so we did. So we just picked the deputy word.
Okay. That's definitely a question.
That was it?
Yeah, no, that's okay. And I do think, I might as well chime in here since it's on. I do think that batting that position back in is an important position. I'll just say that it's a big town, it makes sense. And I'll leave my opinions on the deputy thing.
Jamie, I just noticed we had 71,000 for that last year,
Say it again, sorry.
or I guess this year. There's 71,000 in the budget for that this year. For 26.
Right, yeah, that was that was like her salary from probably the beginning of the fiscal year to when she left.
Okay, cool.
And then some of that money went into administrative personnel for the communications director and the part-time admin, so there's a little bit of a shift there.
I started at the you asked for 190, but you only went up 180. But then when I look at the details, I get it. I see it's not 1-to-1, it's 70 to 190, and then all the other lines change a little bit. I'm good.
Again?
Yeah, sorry, Tricia. It's gonna be a long night.
Settle in.
Administrative personnel, how many is that?
It's the communications director, well, it's the operations individual, operations manager, Julie McCann. It is the communications director and the part-time administrative assistant.
So it's the,
So it's 2.5, 2.5 FTEs.
and those all are the.
Yep. And I did on the next sheet, which is going to the personnel sheet that I just put up, I know that they say the word vacant in them, but they have been hired. They've just been here for 3 or 4 weeks, a month or so. When these documents get updated further down the process, we'll fill in the real names. But you can see the itemization over on the right of each of the salary levels and the hourly rates.
So the only open one.
Not the deputy.
Right, that's still open.
Yeah, that's still open. Yeah.
Anybody?
So you know I have to ask what you would cut.
Yeah, nothing. It's okay. I took it, just for the record too, and I did put this up because I figured cuts were gonna come up. If you look up here, well, I mean, I took a 20% expense pay cut 2 years ago of $8,000. So, not saying that, but I'm proposing to not cut anything in my budget.
And I didn't do the math, but is the 175,000 from 26, that goes to 225 for 2027?
Yeah.
Is that reflecting just the standard COLA raises?
Yes. Yeah, I think I alluded to that, but not crystal clear at the beginning. On all of these personnel sheets for the town, I could just speak for the town side, they all reflect either the contractual obligations and all the collective bargaining, which also for all the non-union staff includes the 2.5% COLA for just that wage increase. That's correct. Across the board.
I mean, sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's 50K on a 175 budget. That's way more than 2%, right?
I think what's getting mixed into this is the fact that the numbers shuffled around, not because of the 2.5%, although that's baked in there, but because the numbers with the part-time admin, the communications director, and the deputy town administrator are making FY26 look a little odd. I mean, I can have having recalculate the math, but I'm guessing there's an assumption in here that I don't know if I'm.
So, can I ask a question? So in FY25, we spent 85,000. You were down 2 staff?
What?
So see where the personnel, administrative personnel is? It says in FY25, we only paid 85,000. That's because you were down 2 staff?
No, we didn't have a communications director,
Oh,
right? She just got hired a month ago, so we didn't have in FY25, we didn't have anywhere near the same staffing model as I have today.
okay, so
We had a full-time administrative assistant.
So communication director is a new position,
Correct.
effective FY26. Okay.
She started at the end of February.
By the way, I asked for help from her today to get the word out about these meetings. If you've noticed her recent post, 2 or 3 or 4 that I've noticed, you notice them because she knows what she's doing. There's graphics, they jump off the Facebook page, you know, and we didn't do enough advertising that we're here. And unfortunately gonna have to advertise it somewhere, and the only thing that's really available is social media.
I think where it's hard to like nail down is in FY25 I had a certain staff model. In FY26 that all went to shred. And then in FY27, now that I've built back up some of those staff members that were lost because of budget cuts and because of a variety of other things that we don't want to get into right now in terms of the deputy town administrator leaving, and then we posted the job, and then it was taken down, and then it got, quite frankly, just political. I've built my FY27 budget based off the current staff plus adding in the deputy.
So if you get the.
So it's not apples to apples of each of those 3 fiscal years. It's like 3 different food groups. So it's very hard I understand why it's a little hard to look at that and see if all the pieces are there. But if you go on to the next page, and I'll put it on the screen again, you can see over here I've outlined each of the salary line items for FY27. And if you went back to FY26 budget, if you went back to that, you might be able to draw where the, to your questions of 71,000 versus whatever.
I think it's just partial people is the
It is.
net summary. It's the only net new is the deputy administrator. Everybody else are looking at
Well,
some weird.
and then the full-time admin got laid off in my budget cuts last year too.
That's the other thing that
So
you're not remembering.
my full-time admin was a full-time position that got laid off in October. So that's reflected in the actuals in FY26, but we're not done with FY26 yet. So what Evan, I believe, did is took the administrative person, the FY26 numbers reflect like the modern environment, and the FY27 request takes the modern environment plus the deputy and puts that out there. But at the end of the day, I suffered a full admin cut last year, and now I hired back a part-time admin now going into FY27. And that's kind of the reason why I'm not proposing, when I get asked what am I going to cut, I'm going to say nothing, because I've already been cut a lot.
So that's what I was gonna say. So the communication manager isn't to So the communication manager position isn't to suffice the lack of the deputy.
A little bit, because Amy did do a lot of that
Right.
work. And my former admin that was here, got a degree in communications, and he did a lot of that work. So it is actually to supplant
Those two
some of the
positions.
work that both of those two people were doing, correct?
Okay.
And that's why communication, like our newsletter stopped, that's why social media stopped. And when I made the cut last year with the admin in particular, I was very blunt with the public that last June, you may come to my office and there may not be anyone there. You may not see any social media posts. We ceased all social media. We stopped blog posts. We stopped the newsletter. We stopped all that stuff because we didn't have the time to do it. For about 6 months, it was just myself and Julie.
Yeah, but your proposal for the model that you currently want for the next year
Correct.
is all of those positions?
Is all those positions, yep.
Okay. And then one other question, you said that the $8,000, what fiscal year was that, $8,000?
FY25. Yeah. And I even put up on the screen, because I figured this would come up.
Because I'm looking, I'm like, oh.
It was part of the tier 1 cuts in late June of 2025.
No, that's okay, I was looking at the salary line.
It was expensive.
It was expensive.
Excuse me, FY25, just to be clear. My bad.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Also, I agree this is probably a position we filled with a 35,000 person town, talking about strategic things that we're trying to accomplish and subcommittee meetings and kind of all the stuff that goes along with that. One question for you though, right now when we don't have a deputy, what is the succession plan? Like, if you were to leave tomorrow, like, what happens with this role? Is this like well-defined or?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm glad you guys asked it, because it's the first time I've ever been asked that question, John, so I appreciate it, and I think you wouldn't have one. So you'd probably have to get an interim. So you'd have to get at least somebody in to do the work. There would be some concern from, given our town charter and our form of government, there would be some concern from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that there was nobody here to hold the ship down while there was probably a full search. So full search for a community like this, you'd probably be looking at anywhere between 3 to 5 months. to hire a full-time person. Depending on the search, it could take even longer than that. Sometimes they take 6 months in a community that's larger. It depends on the values of the community and how much you want to pour into a global, worldwide executive search, right? When, in all truth, it's going to be somebody within Massachusetts or New England. But given the fact that the community hasn't been through a search in 25, 26 years, it'll be a very new thing for the community. I will say the succession planning from my predecessor to me was about as flawless and seamless as any community you could ever have. I got a good 3-year head start as the assistant town manager here. I was the first assistant town manager this town's ever had. And it was designed to give a 3-year roadmap in to learn the organization. And if I went based off what Amy said as well, to learn the town of Franklin and the organization is a solid 2 to 3 years to learn all the different facets of what you need to do. It may sound crazy, but you're the chair of the regional dispatch board. You're on the animal control thing. You got to go be on the MBTA executive committee and show up a couple times a year. You've got to be a part of a lot of things that you don't normally a part of. Also in this community, you are fully integrated with schools, so you're going to want somebody with a background that has something in schools. So if that were to happen, and I think that this town, a good reason for a deputy town administrator is to start to begin that conversation of a succession planning kind of thing, because you're already 2 or 3 years out if you're going to really have somebody here. And just to be clear, an assistant town manager that you hire does not necessarily mean that person's going to replace me. Amy Frigiletti didn't want to be a town manager. She was a smart woman, right? Like, she's a very, very bright person, right? Like, that, she said it right from the get-go. I don't want to be a town manager ever. So there are a lot of people that do that role and do it well and want to be the number 2. But even if you have somebody here for a few years, and then to your point, if I were to move on or something like that, you at least have somebody who knows the ins and the outs of the organization. And it's not where all the skeletons are buried and stuff like that, although that's helpful. It's just there's a lot of minutia to this entire job that oftentimes no one notices, no one knows. It just comes with the gig.
Yeah, I mean, even if they don't want it on an interim basis, that would be super helpful.
I mean, I'm friends with assistant town managers in other communities that have been the interim 3 or 4 times for 3 months while they get somebody to replace them. And that's also a really great reason to have an assistant town manager, right? I mean, it's not just because I go on vacation 4 weeks a year. Although I'm going on vacation soon, so you will end up getting an appointee that's probably not going to be happy they're going to be the interim while I'm gone. And so you're going to start to see that. It's like, do you want the fire chief was my interim for a couple weeks when I was gone once. That's not really, it's also one of those things, I'll be honest too, like, your reputation in this business is everything. And if you're looking for recruitment of somebody for me down the road in 5 years or so, I can tell you right now, your recruitment of a deputy town administrator is going to be far less good than if you have somebody and you fully are supporting the office. With one person, which used to be there, just Julie, like, you're not recruiting anybody to take my job with just one person in the office. Like, they're not going to do it. Like, why? That's hard. Because you're walking into an environment from an outside person applying, and you're already not going to have support. So not just physical support, but also political support. And so there's a lot of avenues we could go down into this, but that's kind of a few of the high-level things.
Well, that was an interesting discussion. Someday I'd like to talk about other ideas. Do you have an org chart that we could look at?
Yeah.
Who reports to?
Yeah.
I don't have to have it tonight. But.
We did do an org chart once, and everybody hated it. Thank you, Ken.
Nobody likes it.
Seriously, but look, I understand. We can do an org chart. It just becomes very big, but if you're looking for who reports to who, we're one of the very few governments in Massachusetts where every single department reports to the town administrator. The only exception.
Flatten the chart.
Well, we can leave the town clerk off the org chart. We'll leave her out in her own bubble. But also the school superintendent obviously has jurisdiction over those school employees.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of high level, what departments report in.
Yeah.
Just like visual.
All set? Anybody else? I figured it would be TJ for 2.5 weeks.
So do we vote on each budget individually?
We're not voting tonight at
Nope.
all.
Okay.
Not vote, no.
All right.
Okay. We're meeting the town administrator. Yeah. The finance committee.
You have to go sit over there now.
Yeah. Finance.
I would put out there, maybe we could cut that budget by whatever our conference, I don't know if anybody's attending conferences or plans to this year, but like, looks like we haven't used that, we were discussing in the meeting.
In my 11 years, I've attended one with a brand new member 3 or 4 years ago. And there's been really no requests to do it. I'm not sure it's only the finance committee meeting in Sharon or something in the spring that we have in there.
Yeah, I mean, you got most of the budget now is for the minutes. I think there's an annual finance committee
Yeah.
seminar. It's probably like $50 or
Which
something.
I went there, and because of our form of government, et cetera, it was an absolutely useless day.
Yeah.
It was. It was usually finance committees or
Thank
more.
you. I spoke.
I didn't hear her.
You were there.
But anyway,
Other than that,
It was useless because you see her all the time,
Yeah,
right?
already do it.
You can do that without paying.
But yes, Frank, to your point, I think it's not a lot of room, because the 4,500, right, is the note-taking, which I think is actually really good and really beneficial. Like, if people want to go back and read those, it's so good. But if you wanted to throw, like, keep another 500 in there, that aligns with what we spend. I mean, it's $2,000, but $2,000 is $2,000.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all I was proposing, it's like $2,000. and we're
Yeah,
not
but we just don't
use,
need it, yeah.
Like, on a $7,000 budget, I feel like if we're gonna do this to everybody else.
Yeah, we're not gonna spend it,
Be
yeah.
introspective.
Can you talk to me about the note-taking?
It's just the transcription service for the minutes.
And will you divide it up on every board?
Yeah.
it's done right now by.
I mean,
when I was.
it's horrible, but
Yeah, when I was doing them, it was 1 page. You read the minutes that's in there tonight, just 10, 12 pages, inaccurate. Whereas mine were meant from memory or watch the video. That was how I did it.
yeah.
So,
We still have to, by law, have recorded minutes in writing for meetings, even though everything's on video and
it's the
YouTube.
person who sits in this chair that gets to do it.
Right. We instituted this maybe maybe a year or two ago.
So it's a town contract?
Yeah, it's a town contract for several boards. The council, the planning board, and one other one still has Judith Lazardi do the minutes in our, maybe ZBA, I can't remember, yeah.
And do you know what the town contract amount is? Off the
It's
top of your head?
maybe like, I think maybe like around $20,000 in the aggregate. That's just for like a handful of boards. Again, the planning board has a transcriber, the council has a transcriber, the ZBA might, I can't remember exactly the tally. If you want all that, if you want to
No,
tally
I'm
it
just
all.
curious. So there's a handful of boards that use this.
Yeah.
In Jamie's budget, you'll see Jamie's budget has a line item for that person. It's in his budget. Judith,
Judith Lazardi.
Oh, yeah, I saw her.
that's what's
On call. I wonder what that was.
Yeah.
she is.
All right, so, all right, just so, how do we do that to lower it to?
Nothing right now, I haven't
Huh?
Nothing
Okay,
now.
we-
Yeah.
but
I have no in
You can
mind.
do it as you go along, or you can do it all at the end.
Wait,
We'll keep
Wanna
track.
change
Like 2,000.
Yeah.
Say we don't need, like, the portion of this budget which is to attend conferences. Yeah,
It's $1,200.
$1,200.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the numbers are what you said, 2,000. so-
I mean,
Yeah.
can I make a recommendation, just do 1,000 in case somebody at some point, some FinCom member decides they
Sure.
go to the conference.
So we're gonna cut 1,000 off from meetings and conferences.
Yes.
You need a roll call vote,
And
or at least a vote of the committee.
Well, wait, I said more questions. The other contractual services is that we have to
Service.
have. We
Well,
can't-
or one of you can do them. Absolutely, that's what we were used to do. I mean, I think Natalie can remember, a member of the committee used to do the minutes.
Okay.
And it stinks.
Yeah.
And so we were trying out some AI services and some different technologies in our office when we had the full-time admin. We were testing out some different things because Zoom was now transcribing with AI, and we were like, okay, how does this work? Should we try it out? And many committees said, we don't want to do our own minutes anymore. The member doesn't want to do them, which I understand, because it's time consuming and kind of bloody work, right? It just stinks. And so we added into all the different budgets that utilize this, and the FinCom has about $4,500 for that service.
It's only $1,000, but do we need advertising and office supplies?
The paper you're using tonight.
Printed out my own. So,
I think you're just seeing, I think you're gonna see across the board in a lot of budgets, numbers like that of advertising. You do have to do a legal ad, which we did. You know, if you wanna cut all that stuff, you can cut all that stuff, but it's not gonna really add up to a lot.
and noted out.
So are we moving on? Yeah. We'll do that whenever the time comes. Comptroller. Oh, Steve.
Steve Sherlock, 15 Magnolia Drive, Community Information Director, Franklin Matters. Without going into the AI piece, my recommendation is the town wants to use AI as an official recording of these minutes. Excuse me, they should not. The one modification I would agree with is to at least include the timestamp of the video, so that if the garble of what comes out of AI at least references back to the video, then you can make sense of it. And that's done because, oh, by the way, I take notes for about 100 meetings a year, and if you choose not to use my notes to start with, that's your choice. But my experience on the AI is atrocious.
Yep.
It's not going to get any better, and for two key reasons. All of your names, unless they're phonetically unique, are never going to come out properly. Quick example, Kobe Frangio always comes out as K-O-B-I. Because there happens to be a K-O-B-E, excuse me, because there happens to be a more famous Kobe than C-O-B-I. The other piece, especially in the government business, you've got acronyms all over the place. Those are never going to translate properly. So, general recommendation, since you're in charge of the overall budget review, if you do want to continue with AI, always include the timestamp back to a recording, which also means you need to keep the recording. But that's just my preference and recommendation. Otherwise, the notes as they come out, years from now, they're below, sorry, 2 cents.
So just so you understand it, I download the minutes, I review them all, I correct all your names, and I include the video, YouTube video at the end. I read them all, then I send them to the chair and the vice chair and the clerk, before you even see them.
So, I mean, maybe not financial consideration. Is there an open conversation with the company or whatever that we have contracted to do this? It's like everything you just described, like Steve just is a prompting thing. Like you could just have the AI do that if you gave it the video and asked it to tie the timestamps, like it'll do that. And you can feed it all of our names and it'll get them correct from that on. Like you can feed it that stuff if they allow us to add to the prompt. I just don't know that they do.
It's something that I will.
We can, yeah, we can work with them offline, but that's not like a financial differentiation. Like that would be better, sure. I don't know how many people are reading the minutes to figure it out. I imagine most people are watching the YouTube video and putting it on 2 speed and jumping, right?
Yeah, I don't know what service they use. The service I do use, I'm allowed to put in the name, so the first time the name appears, it's there, and then assuming it recognizes the voice, it does populate back. But there's still time reviewing, specifically, as she acknowledged. When I did the 6 joint budget hearings, that took at least a couple of hours per review, never mind the meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's still time in there.
What?
So I apologize when I made the packets earlier, I did not include Board of Health, some of the other departments
At the end.
at the end. So that was my mistake, and I asked them.
We've cut the wet noodle out of the budget that we were
Well,
gonna
now you just spent the money out in the office department.
All right, have we beaten ourselves?
We're not voting on anything right now.
The question is do you guys want to do board by board, department by department, account by account recommendations on cuts? Or do you want to wait till the end?
I think we'll make notes, and
Okay.
maybe on our May, whatever it is, meeting.
Sure.
Go through them and then adjust it or whatever.
So we're also making notes here, and we have a tally.
We got plenty of notes, and we have AI to do it. Couldn't resist, sorry. Next one up, controller, if there's more questions on finance. Controller, is that the next one?
Yeah.
No, on finance in general. Carrie,
Yes? Here I am.
questions, guys? Finance department in general. I'm going through the thing. What department?
So we are the finance department. Prior to this year, we were the comptroller. When I became CFO, I changed it to finance because we have a comptroller. It's an individual position.
So if you look at the account 135, that's the finance comptroller's office, and you'll see right up here on the screen a detailed breakdown of the budget on PDF number 14. You have it broken out, the department head salary, the administrative personnel, clerical support, and the one thing we have to have in there, which is just a little bit of money for non-scheduled overtime. We've been able to draw down some of those numbers. Obviously, the accounting and auditing service are, well, not obviously, but the one area where there's a cost increase is really auditing services have gone up a little bit. Our OPEB actuarial has gone up a little bit. But I also want to highlight there's also $52,000 in reductions in both account 135 as well as human resources. It was in the budget narrative last February. It was in the budget narrative in my executive summary of the narrative right now. So if folks at least had read the executive summary, they would have read that Kerry and Karen, our HR director, are proposing $50,000 worth of reduction to both finance and HR. And what you're seeing here is $50,000 also increased to pay for the Munis administrator, which is a new position, which again was outlined in February, also outlined in my executive summary. This is a position that we tried to get in the budget a few years ago, could not find a candidate because it's a very specialized skill. But working with the school department who supports this fully, as well as the superintendent, the school business administrator, and our technology director, this position will be able to create some efficiencies in staff time for all these folks. And maybe Karen or Kerry or others, if you have questions on that position, this would be a good time to ask them what they cut and why the Munis administrator is an important job.
Can you explain what Munis is?
Yes, understood. So Munis is our operating system. That is everything that we do in finance as far as the general ledger, property tax billing, as well as payroll is processed out of there. We do our accounts payable warrants out of there. And Karen Brett in Human Resources uses it for all her personnel items. And we've also now started to scan in documents, personnel documents. So that's Tyler Contact Manager. This is all under Tyler Technologies, and the operating system is Munis. So that's why we say Munis Administrator. We had a lot of changes going on with the fair labor laws, with the overtime. Overtime tables need to be created. This is time out of staff and myself and researching and working with IT. So we need a dedicated person that would help with all these upgrades. I just found out our reporting, all these reports that you see here are done on Crystal Reports. It is going away in October. I have to rewrite all of these reports into the new system because I don't have anybody else to do it. That is now something that we have to do. And we were given a quote of $6,000 per report to rewrite it. This just happened last week. Karen, yes, please.
And we're still working on the electronic personnel files. Yeah, there yet. Sorry,
Mr. Conley, I did a presentation before FinCom in 2020, probably, 19 or 20.
I know we've been talking about it.
We're still struggling to get a lot of our projects done because we've talked a lot before about shortages in technology. Technology has lost staff over the years. They're really just, I'd say barely getting by. They don't have the time to dedicate or the expertise to help us understand Munis. It's a very complicated system. Their own support is not very good. You have to call a help desk and get put on hold, and they look at it, and then they close it out and say it was solved, and it wasn't. It's a very complicated system that's not...
Munis?
Yeah, it's Tyler Munis. But in order for an end user to use it, you have to, have a computer science major. It's very complicated, and we're just not utilizing the system to the best of our ability. So we're doing a lot of manual work, spreadsheets, typing stuff in. It's just we're not able to use the system, and we don't have the staff to dedicate anybody's time to really dig in. If I spend a week, or Carrie spends a week digging into how to improve our systems, we don't get anything else done because we're already really tight on staff. I know it's a really big ask, but I think it's going to have really big returns in helping modernize efficiencies. Maybe down the line, we won't need as many staff. I put in an extra HR position. I was supposed to have an administrative assistant added last year. I didn't get it. That's okay, but we can't keep going with the staff we have without the right technology. And to use that technology, we really need the position. So that's my bag. I think it would pretty much be shared between finance and HR, but it obviously made
as well as
more sense. School as well. And the
This is also
technology.
school finance would help a lot. John Velati is a complete support, but it's not in the school budget. This is completely on the town side. And if you look at my expense budget, I just want to be clear, I have contracts. I have outsourced. I have 2 people that I'm working with right now. So I budgeted $37,000 because I have 2 contractors working on Munis to help me with some. We had some security. We wanted to make sure that positions, workflow, people who had access, we had that all reviewed this year to make sure that we're in compliance. And then again, I have another consultant helping with position control, which is something that we would utilize for the budget and forecasting and succession planning. But I'm outsourcing all of that right now.
Let me ask you something. Is Munis the gold standard or the copper standard?
There's a gold
Well,
standard
municipality.
amongst
It's the
other
only
municipalities. The only, thank you.
it is what it is. And I think to Karen's point, the biggest reason why this is needed is it just frees up the rest of our staff to be able to get to other projects and other things because we don't even take advantage of all of what Munis has to offer. So even though we have the real gold standard, if you will, we still don't even take advantage of it to the fullest potential that it could. And I speak for the schools on that one. We do all payroll, we do all school payroll. They have an AP person, but we work pretty collaboratively with them. As many of you remember, George and Natalie at least, over the last 7-8 years, we've worked with the schools to do an entire org chart. Actually, that is one org chart we did do recently. We restructured both school and town HR. We actually saved money a couple years ago in some of the budget cuts. But as we've continued to move on, it's just an investment that we'd like to make.
Okay. So the Munis administrator salary is $100,000. And is that doing this munis program that's gonna create all these efficiencies? Is that going to alleviate the need for, like, one of the payroll administrators or any of this accounting and auditing and financial services?
It would be reducing, I was taking, as it states in the memo, I think I'm taking it out of the, I'm sorry, let's get the right term.
Let's get the, yeah, right, Gary, sorry.
I'm sorry, the financial services expense line item. I'm reducing there.
So that's only going down
Yep.
15,000.
Well, I don't want to completely remove everything. Let's see if I can find someone. So I don't want to be short money.
Oh, this isn't a person that you've hired yet?
No. Oh,
Okay.
no.
Right now, we have to use some piece together consultants to do some of this work. So we're reducing 15,000 from expenses that we usually spend on consultants. We had our former finance director, Chris Sandini, stayed on for quite some time to help with the transition, make sure that Carrie and Linda were fully ready to go. We eliminated that position. And we also took $5,000 from the HR budget. So we're basically saving
50,
almost
yes.
48,000, which means that the 100,000 now is only going to cost us 52.
Right.
If we don't have the munis administrator, we have to bring those costs down. We're not going to be able to get by without that money in the expense budget.
That makes sense.
Yes, and we would probably use more of Chris Sandini's funding to hire more munis consultants.
Right.
But I think this is definitely one where having someone in-house 100% of their time working directly with us. When you're working with consultants, it's very complicated to get scheduled. Some of the best consultants aren't in Massachusetts, so we're working with someone in Vermont right now where we're trying to, have them come onto our computers and do it. If you had someone in-house, they could do a lot of that. So there's a lot of efficiencies there, which will make us able to use the system we have a lot better.
Would that reduce any of this $79,000 accounting and auditing services?
No, not at all. That is completely separate.
And what-
That's our auditors
Okay.
that come in every year. They do our financial statements, and they also do the federal single audit as well, and some of the schools. But this is just for the town audit, which will be presented on May 3rd, 18th, 13th. Sorry, 13th.
Would you theoretically be able to get rid of this 22,000 in financial services if you had them? When you hire Meredith, I understand that you don't right now.
Correct.
Let's pretend.
That's a goal. Yes,
So that
would be the
22
goal,
would come
but I
out.
don't want to say all of them.
Well, the financial services we can't remove because that's John Finnegan and
No, that's
in the
treasurer collector.
or the treasurer. I mean, not John Finnegan. The Peter, financial advisor, right? Isn't that in that account?
That's also treasurer
Oh, it is?
collector.
Okay.
That's Unibank, that's Margaret.
Okay.
Oh, the actuarial, sorry. I have to pay for the OPEB actuarial, which is about $2,000 or $2,500 a year.
Okay, so not all of the 22,
Not all of it.
but maybe
That is correct.
a
That is
significant
correct.
amount of it?
I can't guarantee.
Yeah. I think
I think over time, probably.
Right. I think what I'm getting at least, is that if we started with our goal, not everybody has this goal, but maybe just a couple of us have this goal, of trying to whittle down in certain places, and it seems as though we're just adding positions, which I understand we need. And I know that letting people go is an emotional decision. So I'm not taking the emotion out of that. I get that that's an emotional thing. But if we're trying to talk needs versus wants, and we think this is a need, right? You've explained this as a need. So then you also need all of the other, is there any redundancies that this is creating? Do we need, this is just an example, don't anybody get mad. Do we need 3 payroll administrators if you have this? I'm trying to.
I think right now we absolutely need the staff we have. I would imagine that if we had the administrator for a couple of years and did some of the big projects that we sort of have in our heads, maybe if someone retired, you might not have to backfill them. I mean, it's very, I can't guarantee anything at this point, but I would expect that there's a lot of efficiencies with like electronic time cards and a lot of entry that we're doing manually. I mean, I think I think that's a possibility down the line.
Okay. I just worry that we're off to a start of just we're adding people. We've added people to, we added people to Jamie's. We only could cut 1,000 of our little tiny weird budget we have. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying this is not the first department we're going to hear from that's going to say, no, we absolutely need every one of these people, because it's emotionally taxing to say, well, we just hired a communication specialist, but turns out we need to cut it. So that, sorry, we have to let you go. That's awful, I get it. But I don't know, if anybody here who has a job that works even in corporate America is doing, I'm doing 3 people's jobs at my job. Like, everybody's doing multiple people's jobs. It's not just a town thing where we're asking people to do more with less. Everybody's doing more with less. So it's, it's not, I'm not being mean, just saying what we actually have the money for. We may not have the money to keep this communication specialist. May not have the money to keep,
Understood.
if we want to add in this. That's all I'm trying to say.
Shannon, I think your point is extraordinarily well taken, and I think what you're outlining is something where when you get down a little deeper, I think I've always said this is the question for the community, right? Like, if you, and I'm not even disagreeing with everything, like, if that's the choice, that's okay. But I can't keep responding to people expecting in the public everything to still happen the way it used to. And I respect you because you don't expect everything with cuts to keep coming back. But the bad news is most people do. Like, when roads get cut, they still want the roads paved, right? Like, when the ambulance, so I think that's, I'm not aiming this comment at you actually, but it's a good pause to say, like, with what you're bringing to the community at this meeting and throughout these hearings, is shared by some other people in the community for sure. But I think the expectations at some point have to either be to the public, we're not maintaining this level of service anymore, and we're gonna make these cuts. And that's the expectation. The Finance Committee and the Town Council and the School Committee have to give the public. We can't keep giving the public the fallacy that if we make these types of cuts, that we're still gonna be able to have the same proficiency or service level moving forward. And whatever that choice is, I think most people here will be disappointed in some of them for sure, but that's okay. That's a choice that the community's gonna make, and we'll take that choice and respect it 100%. What I can handle is expecting me to continue to do 3 jobs. Like, I'm going home at 4.
Right.
And you're not getting a call from me ever again. So if your email goes unanswered, too bad, so sad. It's just the way it is. Like, it's just not, and I'm not going to 8 subcommittees anymore, right? Like, I'm just not doing it. If that's the choice of the community, that's okay. But that's what's gonna, we're not gonna keep doing this and protect and pretend that it's gonna happen, so.
I'll be quick, I promise. So just a quick question. So I understand the value of the units and familiar and all that. And again, when we talk about adding positions, I know that is difficult for people. So when we talk about building internal capacity, we talk about utilizing the staff that we have, and building their capacity out as far as training. So can you talk to me a little bit about why we're not looking to train our staff so that we have multiple people who are experts in this, instead of investing in a position where it would be one person and we're not actually increasing the capacity of the rest of the department?
I think that that's part of it is to be honest, we instituted UNIS in 2007 and haven't had any training since because everyone's winging it.
No, but I'm saying if there was training.
If there was, this
100,000 for a
person,
position
part of the
versus-
responsibility will be to train people and bring people up to speed to figure out how to do something and then educate the whole team on how to do that and slowly pick away at each efficiency.
We don't have documentation. Like, we're going online and just finding that we need somebody here to write procedures, which I understand what you're saying. We do utilize our current staff.
Yeah.
Our comptroller, Linda Darling, has been doing security on positions when new hires come on. I can't make approvals and Linda's in there, I would show them how to do this. Our consultants now are training myself how to do things. So we don't, I don't want to spend the money. I'm the one that sees this every day.
No, I guess I'm just saying from the standpoint of spending the money, but in what way are you spending the money, right? So if we're bringing someone in as a contracted person to then enhance your internal capacity, that's like one-time money. It's not an added position that we then own benefits, then we own cost of living every year, but we're utilizing that person's expertise to build internal capacity through a contractor. So we're still investing money in someone coming in and training your staff, but we're not absorbing them as an employee.
I think part of the challenge is that munis, it all depends on how your particular town is set up. So it's not across the board that you can say that Norwood, how do you guys do it? Because if their system is set up differently, their whole experience is different. So that's really hard. I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying that someone would come in and develop a system around your structure. They're not going to take Norwood's system and bring it to you. They're going to sit down with you and they're going to say, capacity-wise, what are you looking for? Here's the process that you need to follow. Here's how to get that information. So they're tailoring the training to you and your system. You're not hiring Norwood's person to come in and tell you what they do in Norwood.
Right, yeah, no, I understand it's going to be more of a temporary position. I personally think having them on site as an employee is more valuable than trying to find that contractor, but it's certainly something we would look at, or even if you did it to funding for a couple of years to have a full-time person and then sunset them out. And we could certainly
In a contractor capacity. Yeah. Because I think contracted, again, the minute you bring an employee in, that's another $20,000 in benefits, right? But, so I think that's a little bit different, unless that 100,000 budget is for both. I didn't think so. Just wanted to-
We couldn't hire anybody
I know.
3 years ago at like 85 or 90.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to belabor it, but I would just say, I get the benefit of bringing, it's like a software architect, like they're unique and you can't just, like you need somebody in-house, I totally get it. I think what would be beneficial is having more firm ROIs that we need. Like, yes, we're going to bring in this 100, and that 22, it has to drop by next year. Just being a little bit more firm about this is how it's going to pay itself back over time, I think would benefit us, because I do see the benefit of it, but having to be like, well, hopefully we get these things, instead of, no, we are going to get these things, I think would be more beneficial.
Understood.
Getting back to the administrator there, I notice there's no salaries in the IT budget. So is this the IT person?
No.
The IT administrator?
No, this person would be in the comptroller's budget because it's something that's based out of the central area where Munis is. The technology budget, which we won't get to tonight, which will be tomorrow, there's no salaries in there because all of the technology staff is in the school budget.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Where are the bond costs? Do you, obviously you go out to get your bond rating every year.
Yep.
I'm sure you have bond counsel?
Yes, so that's under the treasurer collector's
That's under the treasurer
expenses.
collector? Okay, and you also have an investment bank loan.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that treasurer's budget?
That, yes, but the investment, based on the amount of money we have invested, we don't get incurred fees for investment. We do have a financial advisor when we go out to borrow.
Yeah.
That's in the treasurer collectors.
Okay, but you don't have that as an ongoing cost?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
every
we can
year.
talk about that, the treasurer's budget.
Correct.
Okay. On that. And the audit fees is at $79,000. That's excellent. You know, that's not a bad price,
Thank you.
especially with the A131.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we did mention Munis as a topic in the technology presentation.
Yes.
Have we connected with any of the nearby towns? And like, I get that ours might be different than, you know, neighboring towns.
Regionalizing, is that what you're looking at?
Or just like, if
sharing?
we're gonna go ahead and say, fine, we'll own 100% cost of this person, how can they effectively bring in fees for some offset, 20% or something?
The only way you would do that is you would get the position loaded in, you would go through a full fiscal year to make sure our needs are met, and then when another town next to us is desperate and they're falling apart, we'd say to them, hey, do you want to pay us 10 grand for 5 hours a week to help this person fix your thing? But now you're getting into a cycle of why is that person taking a job here? Why are they not starting their own consulting company and charging twice the amount out in the field, right? So like we've had this conversation in this mix about some sort of shared services agreement. But once you have somebody that's now designed out a system here for 2 years, making 100, 110, and then they realized they could get Bellingham or whatever, Norfolk or somebody to come in and do 5 or 10 hours. Not only are we losing that capacity here for the efficiencies in our budget, but that person, if they're worth their weight, is going to say, thanks so much for all the help. Now after 3 or 4 years, they're going to go start the Acme Inc. company, and then they're going to charge people $225 an hour to do the same thing, and then we're going to be back in the same boat. So,
I mean, that's the exit plan, though, to the discussion earlier. Like, if we bring them on as full-time now, like,
but
in some ways, you're saying that's a negative outcome, and I totally get in some positions it may be. It seems like in this one, that might be positive. If we train up our staff and everybody now is much more comfortable, then maybe we only need 5 to 10 hours from this person, unless there's another upgrade, coming. So we could cut the budget way back down. Like, that wouldn't necessarily be bad.
Nope, but we've also lessened our budget here by half of that salary of the position. And so we first need to get the position in and make sure that we can even hire somebody at that salary level, because we've already tried this once before and it didn't work. And so even getting somebody at 100,000 is going to be tough to do, right? Because that person can, if they're just a one-person show, go out and command their rate, they get their own schedule, but we have to try, because I think, as Karen said, really, and Carrie, I mean, right now, the bandwidth among what we have is pretty much checked out. I mean, it's pretty much done. So without more bodies, we can't keep on investing in more efficiencies. We thought that by reducing the budget 50,000 and paying for it in-house was going to help. We also thought this would help the schools, right? They don't have to fund any portion of this technically, but they still get the benefit. And just to remind everybody, we do all the payroll on our side. That was actually an efficiencies, a cross-training piece that Jen brought up. A couple years ago, they had one way to do it, we had another, but through some good work with the superintendent, we were able to bring everybody under one shop, and now everybody is cross-trained pretty well across the board. So we're working on those efficiencies, but they take a little time to realize some of the things.
We are now producing this in collaboration with Franklin TV and Franklin Public Radio. This podcast is my public service effort for Franklin, but we can't do it alone. We can always use your help. How can you help? If you can use the information that you find here, please tell your friends and neighbors. If you don't like something here, please let me know. Through this feedback loop, we can continue to make improvements. And I thank you for listening. For additional information, please visit franklinmatters.org. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me directly at suresteve@gmail.com. The music for the intro and exit was provided by Michael Clark and the group East of Shirley. The piece is titled Ernesto Mañana, copyright Michael Clark and Tin Type Tunes in 2008, and used with their permission. I hope you enjoy. By the way, you can also subscribe and listen to Franklin Matters Radio on your favorite podcast app. Search in podcasts for Franklin Matters.